Lego, I mean, what's not to love, right? It's this global super brand, the biggest toy maker on the planet. For so many of us, it's synonymous with quality, creativity, and those amazing childhood memories. But there's a but. Alongside all that massive success, something else has been building, and it's frustration.
And look, we're not just talking about a few random complaints online. The loudest voices, they're coming from LEGO's most die-hard fans. Yeah, the people who love it the most. They're saying LEGO's abandoned its creative soul, that it's all about profit over play now. And honestly, the list of complaints just keeps getting longer and longer.
So, how did we get here, right? How did the toy that basically built our childhoods end up in this controversial spot with the very people who championed it? To figure that out, we've got to go back. Way back.
Okay, so to really get what's happening with LEGO today, we need to rewind the clock. Let's start at the very beginning, in a tiny carpentry workshop in Billund, Denmark. We need to look at the core ideas that kicked this whole thing off. So the story kicks off with a guy named Ole Kirk Christensen. He's making wooden toys back in the Great Depression. He even came up with the name Lego, which literally means play well in Danish. But the real game changer, that came in 1949. See, Ole saw these British toys called Kiddicraft blocks and thought, hey, I can do that. So he made his own version. And then, a few years down the line, his son Godfred perfected it, adding that revolutionary stud-and-tube system that we all know and love. And just like that, the modern Lego brick was born. And this is where we hit our first big paradox. Think about it. Lego itself was born from taking inspiration from someone else's design and making it better. Now, fast forward to today, the company has this huge army of lawyers, right? And they will go after anyone who even thinks about doing the same thing. It's a pretty aggressive way to protect your brand, especially given where they came from. Godfred the son, he laid out this really clear vision, like a constitution for what a Lego toy should be. Durable, timeless, good for all kids. And here's the kicker, reasonably priced. The whole idea was this system of play that just about any family could afford. Now, keep these principles in mind because they are absolutely crucial for understanding where all the modern frustration comes from. All right, so Lego had decades of just incredible success. The 70s and 80s, themed sets, the first minifigures, they were on top of the world. But with all that success came overconfidence. And by the time the 90s rolled around, that unstoppable empire, it was heading straight for a cliff. So what happened? In a word, video games. Lego started freaking out about them, so they panicked, and they just started throwing everything at the wall. They diversified like crazy. We're talking clothing, jewelry, theme parks, you name it. They were pumping out so many new product lines. Some of them, like the infamous Galador series, barely had any building to them at all. They completely lost their focus, spread themselves way too thin. It got so bad that parents and kids were literally getting confused and lost in the Lego aisle. And the result of all this? It was an absolute catastrophe. By 2003, the company was staring down total collapse. They reported a loss of, get this, $288 million. The whole Danish toy empire was right on the very brink of bankruptcy. So to save the company, the founding family did something that they'd never done before. They brought in an outsider, a guy named Jürgen Vig Knudstorp, a former consultant. And he came in and started making these huge, drastic changes that didn't just save Lego, they would completely redefine what the company was, forever. Knudstorp's plan? Man, it was ruthless, but it worked. He cut 1,000 jobs. He moved production to cheaper spots in Eastern Europe and China. He sold off the majority stake in the Legoland parks. He just slashed that bloated product list. He forced the company to get back to its core, the simple, classic brick. But his most genius move? It was targeting an audience that Lego had pretty much ignored for its entire history. So what was this secret weapon? It was the AFOLs. That stands for Adult Fans of Lego. This was this passionate, super nostalgic, growing online community that was basically an untapped gold mine. I mean, think about it. These are adults with disposable income ready to buy all the giant, expensive sets they could only dream of as kids. And they were already incredibly loyal to the brand. And this right here, this shows you the huge pivot. Before 2004, it was simple. Lego was for kids, and the goal was a system of play. But after 2004, the target became kids plus these adult fans. And the goal? It wasn't just play anymore. It was play and high-value collectibles. The marketing switched to focus on big licenses and nostalgia. This was a total rewriting of the company's DNA.
And LEGO didn't just dip their toes in. They dove in head first. They started pumping out these exclusive sets that were only available for a short time. They deliberately created scarcity. This turned simple toys into investment assets, and it preyed on every collector's biggest fear: FOMO, the fear of missing out. Suddenly, a set you bought for $200 could be worth $600 just a couple years down the road. Now, don't get me wrong, this turnaround was a massive, astonishing success. LEGO was saved. But here's the twist. The very same strategies that brought the company back from the dead, they are the direct cause of all the fan frustration we're seeing today. Okay, first big complaint: the price. LEGO will tell you the average price per piece hasn't really changed, but for fans on the ground, that just doesn't feel right. The pricing feels kind of random. I mean, look at this. Yeah, licensed sets are usually more expensive per piece, but then the gigantic Millennium Falcon is actually cheaper per piece than a much smaller Star Wars set. It's confusing, and for a lot of people, it just feels unfair. Then you've got the issue of quality. You're paying a premium price, so you expect premium quality, right? Well, critics like Thomas Panka are pointing out some really big flaws. Take this set honoring the racing legend Ayrton Senna. The helmet on the minifigure, the single most iconic part of the whole thing, was a total mess. Wrong color, positioned wrong, misprinted. For a collector's item, it was just a disaster. And look, this isn't just a one-off thing. You go online and you see the same complaints over and over. Colors that don't quite match between bricks, sloppy printing on the minifigs, and oh my gosh, the stickers. Putting cheap stickers on really expensive sets instead of printing the details. It just gives people this growing feeling that the company is cutting corners, but in all the worst places.
And if you look at where the money's going, it kind of backs this up. In 2024, only about 5% of LEGO's expenses went into R&D, actually developing the product. Meanwhile, a whopping 40% went to sales and distribution. The message that sends is pretty clear, right? The focus seems to be way more on selling the product than on perfecting it.
So all of this brings us right back to the core of this LEGO paradox. The company was saved, there's no doubt about it. It became more successful than anyone could have imagined. But the big question is, in that process, did it lose something essential?
And this is really the two faces of LEGO today. On one hand, you've still got the creative childhood toy, the one that's built on all of our shared nostalgia. But on the other hand, you have an investment asset, a collector's item that people are told to keep sealed in the box, marketed with that fear of missing out. It feels like Godfred Christensen's original system of play is now in a battle with a system of pay.
At the end of the day, LEGO doesn't just sell little plastic bricks. It sells a feeling. It sells nostalgia. But as the company's whole strategy shifts, you really have to wonder, what feeling will the kids of today connect with this brand in 20 years? Is it going to be that pure joy of creative play? Or is it going to be the stress and anxiety of a limited edition collectible? And maybe the biggest question of all is, will that new kind of nostalgia be enough to keep the magic alive?